For the first time in his life, Clyde was holding his adorable grandson, but he suddenly realized something was strange. He kept looking around with his eyes, even started to gesture with his hands. Then he measured the distance with his feet. Fenton thought his father didn't like the house, but Clyde actually liked it. He just wasn't satisfied with the location of it. They were all confused. Then Clyde moved the bags into the room. Brian was clamoring to go out and play. He wanted his grandfather to take him exploring. Jolene wanted him to rest for a while. He told Brian to play alone for a while.
Don't you ever let your father hear you say that, you understand?
Knowing that Brian was alone, Clyde signaled to keep the playdate a secret. Then he snuck out of the house. Brian made a perfect distraction, and then he rushed after him. Fenton bought a whole lot of land, but a long time ago, the first owners were Indians. Brian explored the neighborhood with curiosity, fantasizing about finding their buried treasure, and that's when Clyde dug something out of the ground. Brian thought it was an Indian arrowhead, but it was a railroad spike. A train has traveled before, called the Highball Express, right around where they're squatting. Now it's all fields. It's hard to pinpoint its route. Then Brian found rusty parts, and then Clyde told its story.
Where the Highball Express ran off its tracks.
Really? When did that happen?
Back when I was your age, Brian.
The train went off its tracks that night, and no one survived. Brian was shocked to hear that. He wondered if Clyde had witnessed the tragedy, but Clyde held out his hand for silence. He then put his ear to the tracks. The silence became unbearable. His eyes widened in horror, as if he had heard something. Then he looked behind him, said things were getting worse. Brian wondered what could have happened. Clyde followed the path as fast as he could. If he remembered the train's route correctly, it's going to run right through it. Brian gesticulated excitedly. Their new home is on the route. Clyde had a bad feeling. That's why he thought it was in the wrong place. Back home, Brian fired up his toys and asked why the train had derailed.
Some little boy about your age was waiting for the old 407 to pick him up and take him visit his grandpa in Sioux City.
Since the train was late, the boy decided to lay on the tracks and listen, thinking he wouldn't miss the train, probably because he was tired of listening. The boy fell asleep on the tracks, even when the train whistle blew. Didn't wake him up. The brakemen must have noticed the boy, and then he braked the wheels of the old train. But the sudden weight and pressure caused the train to fall off the tracks and overturn. The boy saw the train roll off the tracks, just 50 feet away from him. The passengers screamed and cried and lost their breath. Clyde choked on his words. Brian had a sneaking suspicion who the story was about. Clyde admitted it was himself, and tonight that old 407 train was gonna do what it did 75 years ago, to take him where he should be. Brian couldn't understand this passage. He's curious when Grandpa will be back. Clyde explained seriously. He's not coming back. Then he finally understood. They hugged each other tightly. Fenton listened in on the conversation. He thought his father was imagining things. Clyde wanted to keep them from getting hurt, but there's no time to move everything. Clyde told Brian if he wanted to keep anything, he'd better say now. Brian thought about it for a while. He chose to keep his grandfather. Time passed and it was night. Clyde was mapping out his route. A doctor came up. He wanted to talk about the Highball Express. Clyde explained that there was no time. They'd have to move the valuables and file an insurance claim the next day. The doctor wondered how he could be sure.
I did what I used to do all the time as a boy. I put my ear to the track and I heard it. Now, don't you think we ought to get to evacuating this place?
Well, you really think it's going to stop for you?
Seeing that he didn't believe him, Clyde pulls out his ticket. Curious, Brian takes it and looks at it. They can't believe Clyde still has a ticket from 75 years ago. The paper was yellow and old, but it still read Highball Express. But then Clyde felt something stab him. The doctor injected some drugs to help him sleep, but he can't sleep now, or he'll miss the train. The doctor said he could take the next one and put him to bed. Jolene didn't know how to explain. She thinks it's for Clyde's own good. He needs to get some rest, but they didn't know the train would come through here. The wheels will run over him. Jolene tried to calm Brian down. The doctor wouldn't do anything to hurt Clyde. Fenton was a little upset. Maybe that's what happens when people get old and don't believe in train stories. At this point, Brian nailed the ticket to the wall. Then he followed Clyde's example and put his ear to the railroad track. Then he fell into a deep sleep. Then it was dawn, and everyone was asleep. The sound of a siren was heard in the distance. The house shook slightly. Brian was suddenly awakened by the sound. He rushed to the window and looked out. A train was coming fast. He yelled for his parents to get up. They thought Brian was having a nightmare. That's why he was screaming. Brian scrambled to get his ticket. Then he went downstairs to wake up Clyde. He noticed that the train was getting closer. Brian kept shaking his body. Clyde finally realized the train was coming. The parents rushed downstairs. They were shocked by what they saw. There was a real train coming. Brian carried the luggage and urged Clyde to follow him quickly. The parents were scared out of their wits. They reacted at the last minute. They rushed Clyde and Brian to the side. The train crashed through the house. The brakemen greet them. Clyde couldn't help but walk up to the train. This is the train he missed by 75 years. Jolene couldn't believe it. The passengers are dressed like they were in the old days. The conductor rushed to check the tickets. Brian rushed to take the ticket over there. He wondered if he could go with his grandfather. Clyde patiently explained that he couldn't, and Clyde didn't belong here, so he had to get on this train tonight. But the stories he told, Brian just needs to remember it in his heart, and Clyde will always be there. They promised to meet again in 100 years.
I hope my ticket's still good. It's kind of old.
It always was good, Mr. Globe. And we've been waiting a long time for it.
After checking the tickets, Clyde turned to say goodbye to Brian's parents. He apologized for the trouble he'd caused Fenton. It's all in a nutshell. Clyde was finally on his journey of life.